Hi, thanks so much for joining our first panel of the day. We're moving right along the sales funnel for this event, starting, of course, with marketing. I'm joined by two very insightful marketing experts, Abhinav Kapur, the co-founder and CEO of Biki, and Suri, the head of marketing for Sendbird. Sid, let's start with you. Do you want to tell us a little about the company, about Sendbird, and how it does things different?
Sure, absolutely. We are a conversations provider. So we essentially allow you to embed the equivalent of like a WhatsApp or a Facebook Messenger. Like think about this rich chat, voice, and video experience. We let you embed that into your own application, into your own mobile app with just a few lines of code. So you get the power of those rich user-to-user conversations inside of your own app, either between users or between your brand and your users, and they don't have to go have that conversation somewhere else. That's essentially what we do.
Interesting. And how does Sendbird, do you think, do better than the auto chat bots that we've all seen for better or worse out there?
Right. We focus a lot on user to user. I mean, we have a chatbot capability, but that's not the bulk of. I mean, I would say 90+% is really user to user. So in fact, our motto is really to help users recreate rich, authentic conversations, simulate real life conversations over digital, right? So that could be between, of course, for this audience, between a delivery provider and a consumer, or it could be, a lot of our customers are in the healthcare space, between doctors and patients, or between a teacher and a student, or between two fans at a game, right? So it's trying to create the magic of those rich connections, those conversations over digital.
Fantastic. Yeah, and those real human conversations are so important. As far away from the telephone we get, the further we want to come back sometimes, I think. And Abhinav, can you walk us through your company Biki a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So Biki is at a high level an omni-channel CRM for restaurants. What that means is we start from a very simple premise, which is that most restaurants don't know who their guests are. Number one, and number two, that they actually have all the data in their business to unlock that understanding. The problem is it's all totally siloed across various guest-facing channels between point of sale, reservations, Wi-Fi, loyalty, kiosk, first-party ordering, third-party ordering. So at Biki, what we do is we break down all those silos and aggregate all that data into one system of record to essentially help restaurants map the entire guest footprint. And then because restaurants don't just pay for data, we built automated tools to push where restaurants can literally program their customer journey within Biki and subsequently push that data and make it actionable in downstream marketing channels like Facebook or MailChimp or various text messaging platforms like Delighted. And so think of it as a high level way of pulling data in, making it actionable, taking action on it. And then of course, because we are the system of record for customer data, we are able to tie everything back to revenue and actually measure the ROI on literally any marketing campaign that a restaurant chooses to run on their guest data.
Fascinating. And I think that I've heard the term single source of truth roughly a million times in the past year, for good reason. I think a lot of people are trying to understand this and trying to connect their maybe Sendbird chat agent to some marketing, or connect that data back to, why is this central marketing CRM so important? And, how does Biki differentiate itself in the restaurant space?
Yeah, the great question, because it is true. But the two biggest things I would say is, why is this important, is because hospitality at its core is about understanding who your guests are, right? Like the reason I started this business, because my mother-in-law started a restaurant with no formal hospitality background, built a 2-star New York Times rated restaurant by herself over a 20-year period, just rooted in touching tables and talking to her guests. And as the business goes increasingly digital, the way for restaurants to actually understand who their customers are is through data, right? Having that data, not just order data and fulfilling orders, but having that behavioral data, enriching it with demographic info so that restaurants actually know who they're serving, is going to become the bedrock of what we call digital hospitality. In terms of how we differentiate ourselves, I think the way I always like to describe it to my team is we are Switzerland. We are totally neutral in the tech stack. We do not have a guest-facing channel. My inherent belief is that there are already enough great online ordering providers out there, like Lunchbox or ChowNow or Bbot or Bento Box, There's great loyalty platforms out there like Thanks, like Level Up, like Paytronics, like Punch. On the reservation side, there's Resy and OpenTable. Restaurants are already flooded with ways in which they can basically take orders or serve their guests. What we like to focus on is what we think is the most overlooked part, which is like, again, what do you actually do with that data? How do you successfully leverage that data to drive more repeat business through any channel, right? It's not just about having a loyalty app. Starbucks is the best loyalty app in the country. It's only 30% of their payments data. And you can only effectively remarket to existing Starbucks app users. What we like to do is free our customers of the silos that exist across their tech stack and essentially enable them to leverage, like we helped while indoor dining was closed, we helped brands leverage their OpenTable data, segment it within Biki, and programmatically use it to retarget those customers on Facebook and drive them to their native delivery provider, because that was the only way they could serve their guests. And we're helping them achieve, anywhere from 8 to 12x return on ad spend, 40% increase in average check size after a month, 20% increase in order frequency for new customers. So I think this idea of just being Switzerland, being neutral and focusing on the data enables us to, one, differentiate ourselves, but two, more importantly, serve our restaurant partners in the most successful way possible.
Wonderful. And yeah, you went through that kind of almost dizzying list of restaurant technology partners out there. And, there's so many people, I think, trying to connect all these dots here.
Yeah.
So I think you both provide the market with, a different perspective and a lot of value. Sid, what do you think the biggest value add of having, integrated chat capabilities like Sendbird in a restaurant business or a delivery, business in this segment? And how has that changed in this last very strange year?
Sure. No, good question. Honestly, conversations is how we get stuff done, right? And whether it's on the internet or off the internet, I'll throw out a crazy stat for you. 6 billion people now use a messaging application on a monthly basis. 6 billion people don't agree on anything, right? 6 billion people don't talk the same language, share the same religion. They can't agree on anything, but they can agree on they want to chat online. So conversations is how stuff gets done. And a lot of what we do is help you build that engagement with users through conversations, answer their questions, and to be honest, a little selfishly, move the transaction forward, right? So, some of the largest food delivery companies are our customers, Delivery Hero in Europe, iFood in Brazil, a whole bunch of smaller ones, some of the big US ones, which we can't talk about. And they all basically come after they all sort of coalesce on a few metrics, engagement, retention, and avoiding cancellations, right? So, we've all gone through that. Hey, where are you? I'm on your porch. No, you're not. Oh, I think it's the wrong house. Oh, no, I'm down the street. Okay, right? What just happened? You just saved an order from getting canceled. And that cancel order is the biggest cost to a lot of delivery providers, right? They eat they pay the restaurant, they eat the cost of the food, and they potentially anger a customer, right? So if you can save that or facilitate that or make that easier, right? And there's a positive side to it. It doesn't just have to be about staving off a cancellation. The positive side is we want our questions answered. Hey, is this gluten-free? Or is this going to be too spicy like last time? Or, why can't I use this coupon that I walked into your restaurant and got online? Right? If you can't answer those questions for people, you can't facilitate that transaction and then hopefully also facilitate the orderly execution of that transaction. All of that, we believe, gets wrapped around a conversation. And we make that conversation possible through chat, through voice, through video, whatever the app, whatever path the app wants to go down. Just one last thing I'll say is that, it sounds easy, but user expectations are really set by the big boys, right? So you use WhatsApp and you see that first check go and then that second check go, and you're like, wait, why does my food delivery provider not have 2 checks and tells me exactly when, the driver saw my message and, exactly when they're going to show up, and trying to recreate that with, a handful of developers in your own mobile app is just, it's a losing battle, right? You're competing with the experience set by Apple, Facebook, and Google with your tiny little development team. So what we do is essentially say, hey, listen, don't try this at home. We have 100+ engineers working on chat. a few lines of code, put it in your app, you're off and running.
Don't try this at home. I love that. Love that phrase there. And you touched on a couple there, but how do you think these interactions really drive people through the funnel and stop those cancellations for one? But how else do you think it moves people along? I think that's a really interesting thing.
Yeah, I think it's just the power of getting your questions answered. Everybody's got questions, right? A lot of our customers are two-sided marketplaces, not just food. And a lot of them are international. A lot of them are outside of the US, where the adoption of chat over email or text has been much faster. So a lot of marketplaces, right? You look at a picture and you're like, as a buyer, you want to contact the seller. Hey, I like this sweater. Is that really cashmere? Oh, it is. Are you sure? Can you take a picture of the label and send it to me? All right, I believe you. Great. Can I get a deal? Sure, 10% off. All right, let's go. Right? You're not like, you don't, unless you have that conversation, you're probably just going to view, browse, and move on, right? You can imagine that in food. You can imagine that anywhere. And that power of conversation is how selling happens. That power of conversation is how relationships get built. It's how selling happens. It's how you move people through a funnel from I'm mildly interested to I'm ready to buy. And that the power of that, enabling that conversation inside of your app is essentially, I think, a big part of our value prop.
Wonderful. And then there's that handoff to folks like Abhinav. There's all this data built in these conversations, I think. How do you think these conversations prompt a better understanding of the consumer?
Yeah, exactly. We are one of those channels that we would hand off to Switzerland. So I think it would be a very complementary scenario. Probably our most popular feature at the enterprise level is the data export, because people want to mine that stuff for all the goodies, right? They want to know, okay, what is this user's sentiment and what do they like? And, are they always upset? And are they at risk of churning? Do I need to give them like a more customized outreach? Or maybe they're happy and I know their birthday and I can sort of get a bigger party in the door or something like that, right? So we generate a ton of data through those conversations, especially with chat. Voice and video, of course, a little harder. And then we again don't take a stance of what you should do with it. It's your data. We actually can't read it. We can only read the metadata, and then we just send that to your analytics system, your CRM, whatever you want to do with it. We try to be an agnostic channel, so we play nicely with sort of the agnostic CRMs.
The Switzerland of chat passes it off to Switzerland of CRM, right? It's a beautiful neutral space. So Abhinav, once you get all these goodies, how do you make them usable? What are some best practices around using this data to push people further down the funnel?
Yeah, I think I'll say two things. One is the way in which we do it today, and the second piece will be what Sid has been talking about and why I'm so excited about incorporating kind of guest experience stuff into our product. One of the primary ways in which we make our data actionable is through something actually super simple that most restaurants, including enterprise brands, don't do. Facebook has this famous stat where I think, and I'm probably going to get it wrong, but if you add 6 people or 10 people within the first 6 days, you never stop using Facebook. You never churn. And they persistently ask you to add contacts within your first week of signing up for the product. And what a lot of restaurants don't do is that same level of onboarding. I remember in the early days of Biki, restaurants would say all the time, I want to be like Sweetgreen. I want to be like Sweetgreen. And I'm like, do you guys know what that means? Or do you just see them raising money and have high digital app usage? And, and what I realized was 2 things. I actually downloaded the Sweetgreen app and I realized 2 things. One is their approach to restaurant marketing is totally antithetical to what most restaurants do. Most restaurants will flood your inbox with spray and pray promotional emails. Sweetgreen doesn't do that, right? Everything is story-based. Here's our brand, our values, what we stand for, the farmer whose seeds are, now in your salad. That was number 1. Number 2, they actually had an onboarding cadence that was very structured. I think I got 3 emails in the first 10 days and an email every 5 days after that until day 40. And so what we said to our partners was like, if you want to be like Sweetgreen, again, we are your source of truth for customer data. We know when a new customer is actually a new customer. We know when it's their first visit. We know when it's their first order. Why don't we just help you essentially automate your own welcome flow? Because when a customer gives you their email address in the digital world and they say yes to you, that is the happiest moment that they have with your brand. They're literally giving you a piece of personal contact info and saying yes to you. And so what we say to our partners is like, take advantage of that. Tell your story. Talk about your brand. Talk about your values. Highlight your menu in a structured, strategic way that, again, conveys who you are and your connection with this guest in the era of digital hospitality. So much of what we try to do is modernize hospitality for, you know, the immersion of all these digital platforms that are occurring. And you know, what we found is because we are so data driven, we actually reserve a 20% control group in the welcome flow. So if 10 new guests order yesterday, 8 of them will go through the welcome flow and 2 of them won't get anything. And it depends on the size of the brand, but there is anywhere from a 15 to 50% increase in revenue in a 40-day period between the folks getting the flow and the folks in the control group. And that's consistent across, you know, all of our, you know, 45 plus customers, restaurants that we work with. Across, you know, 250 locations almost. And so again, like that onboarding flow, that is like one of the most basic ways that we see restaurants not successfully leveraging their data, their brand, their values, their story. And so being able to just plug that in and automate it for them, and like the old Ronco Showtime oven, set it and forget it infomercial, that's literally what we're offering. Just you build it, we'll give you the template, you build the emails, drop in your email service provider, we integrate with it, you set it and you forget it. You never have to think about welcoming new guests again. The second thing, which I'll touch on quickly, is something that is currently not bundled in today is this idea, at least for many of the restaurants we work with, this idea of guest experience tied to historical guest behavior. What that means is if Sid is enabling someone to essentially say, I had a bad experience, like this was not great, you know, what we want is our partners to program something in Biki that says anyone with a lifetime value of $500 or more who had a negative experience through Sendbird, let's trigger an email automation that wins them back and welcomes them over, right? Sid's talking about this enterprise level export functionality where people mine the data and then figure out from there if someone needs a higher level of communication. What we essentially want to do at Biki, what is one of the core focuses of our product roadmap, is partnering with guest experience companies and actually tying the ordering behavior that we're getting with the guest actual real-time experience behavior and enabling the restaurants now to layer that in as part of their automated customer journey, right? We want them to automatically reach out to these customers based on their level of spending, based on their order frequency, based on what locations they've ordered from, based on what channels they've ordered from. And so one of the things I get really excited about is enabling this brand new layer of personalization and engagement that, as previously, again, it's siloed from all the order sources and all the guest behavior data that we're pulling in, and that's a gap that we want to close within the next 12 months. So.
Wonderful. And yeah, Sid, do you want to talk a little more about that? I mean, I think this interconnectivity between folks like you and folks like Abhinav is a big sea change in the space. You know, all these silos that were built in the past many years of restaurant technology or technology in general, I think are coming down with better APIs and better connectivity. You know, how do you see that changing the space?
Yeah, I think that you know, it's sort of become the price to play, right? Data is both an advantage and the price to play. And if you're not using it to understand your users, understand their behavior, you know, what they want from you, when they want it, you're going to get left behind. I think that's fair to say at this point. If you're a mom and pop, you can maybe recreate that magic similar to Abhinav's mother-in-law through the power of the personal touch. But at any scale, right, you start to have to rely. Now, you still want to do your customer research. You still want to get, you know, very close to your customers. You still want to talk to them every day. But you're going to make a lot of decisions on that data. And we think conversations really gives you so much insight into users. This is actually my second chat startup. I ran marketing for another chat company previous to this. And you know, email is still sort of king in many ways. It won't go away, but it's a very sort of unidirectional channel, right? Email is me broadcasting to you, and our inboxes are completely cluttered. Chat's a conversation, right? And in a conversation, you can learn about the user. You might just gather some info from them, right? Like, you know, what time do they want to come in, or they've just moved, or they did a remodel on their house and their door's in a different place, right? All of that is good, good nuggets for the CRM, and you get that in a conversation. So partly why I threw out that 6 billion stat was, chat is sort of the new internet, right? Now, I'm not saying Sendbird is the new internet. That would be nice. But, WeChat, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Line, Kakao, Telegram. I mean, that's where the action is, right? I mean, Mark Zuckerberg in last year's, what's the name of Facebook's conference? It's eluding me now. But in the 2019 April, basically said Facebook is going to transition from the digital marketplace, the digital town hall, to the digital living room. Because those small, intimate conversations is where the market is gone. And that's essentially why Sendbird was founded, and what we do is we try to democratize and give everybody the ability to facilitate those closer and smaller, intimate conversations. The difference is, rather than the business having to say, hey, just contact us on WhatsApp or contact us on email, we say, you know what, you can build your own WhatsApp into your own application, into your own mobile app. So if you're, I don't know, just pick anyone. I'm just picking anyone, not a Sendbird customer, Grubhub or somebody. You want to have that conversation right in there, right? You don't want to have that. You don't want to send your users somewhere else, right? The kerfuffle that just happened with GameStop. I bet Robinhood would have loved to have those users talking inside of their app than talking on Reddit, right?
For sure.
So you give away the conversation. You give away a lot of the sort of user sentiment, the user research. And we're trying to bring that power sort of back to apps.
Wonderful. And I think this really changes how a marketer does their job. I think a lot of people in the restaurant space see that email blast as transactional, like you were saying, but to turn that into a conversation, I think is a different mindset. Abhinav or Sid, do you want to touch on that? How does it change the day-to-day of kind of the marketing department?
It's funny. All we do is think about restaurant marketers. Like that is the main purpose of our product, is enabling restaurant marketers to essentially build their own marketing funnels that compare with what the third-party platforms are doing. To give you probably my most favorite customer insight, we were talking with one of our partners 2 weeks ago, and she has quarterly one-on-ones with her CEO, right? She's the head of marketing at a 5-location brand in New York. And he said, what's the biggest improvement in your job over the past 12 months? And she said, because we work with Biki, I know now how my actions and my role tie to revenue. Because we have something in our product where if you send an email, right, through MailChimp, let's say, you send it to 5,000 people, because we are the system of record for guest data, we can literally tell you within a 3, 4, 5 day window how many of those people that you emailed actually placed an order. And so you can actually gauge the success of your broadcast email marketing activities. You can gauge the success of your more sophisticated automation activities. You can gauge the success of leveraging your open table data to drive customers to your delivery platform and literally converting customers who were only dining customers to delivery customers at a time when indoor dining is closed. You can actually tie everything to real revenue. And so in terms of there's 2 questions. One is the data wrangling. Again, is the most sophisticated marketers we work with who sign up with us, they're like, I was doing all this manually in Excel files and spreadsheets, and it's a huge pain to update. And I would spend a week, or every week I would spend 2 hours exporting everything from Resi, exporting everything from Level Up, and loading it into MailChimp and tagging it properly. We have one API integration that automates that entire process. So we're literally saving them hours of painstaking work, number one. Number two, we're giving them all this data. Number three, we're giving them the tools to actually make it actionable and drive real revenue and understand their own performances and help them level up in their careers. Like, my dream with our product is for someone at a 2 or 3 location brand to basically go and do so well in their job, they move up to a 30 or 40 location brand, and they say, oh my God, you guys don't have Biki? That's one of the things that made me so successful in my previous role. We're going to get them plugged in here. That is literally like my dream scenario. Hasn't happened yet. We're getting close with, it's not like that anecdote I gave you, but in terms of, what we do for the marketers, it's democratizing access to data. I love that Sid mentioned that word democratization, because, there are a lot of platforms out there where they monopolize the data. And our firm belief is that restaurants should have data on their customers. They should know who their guests are, because they need to understand how to better engage them and retain them and build relationships with them. And that, to me, is fundamentally, in a digital era, the marketer's job first and foremost.
Wonderful. And Sid, I think there's this data interplay there that's really fascinating. If a restaurant company or any company has a great CRM, how can all that data inform what you do on the conversational side? Are there some extra benefits there?
We have a couple of marketing tools that we give to the product managers and marketers and app builders. One is announcements, so we can do chat announcements. So that's a little bit more of a blast, but it pulls people back into the conversation. So that could be for a special or a price drop or whatever, right? Grand opening. We also have Friends API, which is essentially a social graph. So we let you build a social graph and manage that. So family members and friends and things like that. And then we also have a push notification feature that allows you to essentially get notifications out for people that are not in the app at the time. All of those are sort of designed for marketing style engagement. We don't actually manage the users. We don't manage the audience segmentation, the tagging, all of that. We're expecting somebody like a Bikky to send to us, right? So we're expecting a CRM to say, hey, I want to send out this promo to these users at this time, and we'll go do that. And we think we'll do it in a much better way than email or SMS for a lot of reasons. It's cheaper, it keeps people in your app, it's engaging. But yeah, we rely on the CRM or a data warehouse or something to say, for this audience, do X, for that audience, do Y. Like that, we don't manage that intelligence.
Sure, wonderful. And just being able to send that data back and forth, I think is hugely powerful. Talk to me about how maybe the restaurant industry should be thinking or rethinking their marketing holistically with all these new tools in mind, because I don't think anyone can do it with just a chatbot or just a CRM or just these other things. How should the space be rethinking their marketing overall? Either of you.
Go ahead, Sid. I took the last one first, so you go.
I'll go first. I'll have a much smaller answer than Abhinav, so I'll leave most of the time. I think that honestly, we're giving you tools to better engage and reach your customers at the points where they want to be reached. But that doesn't change the fundamentals of marketing. You still have to understand your customer. You still have to listen to them, talk to them. It could be through data. It could be through personal touch. It could be through your store managers, whatever, right? So, the fundamentals of, delivering value and service to your customer, to engage them, to retain them. I think what we do is sort of help you to make their lives easier by reaching them where they want to be reached, right? People's lives have got incredibly complicated, not just with the pandemic, even before. People are on the run, they're on the move, and you can make a customer's life easy, they'll love you for it. And a lot of what we try to do is help you reach customers where they're at in a manner they want to be engaged. I think that makes it easier for the business and easier for the customer. But I don't think it changes sort of the fundamentals of marketing. And I think that's a lot of what hopefully Abhinav's product will come in and help with.
Wonderful. Yeah, Abhinav, you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, totally. What I always tell our partners is the key words here are customer relationship. Now, you can think about marketing from a customer standpoint, or you can think about marketing from a relationship standpoint. From a customer standpoint is what most restaurants do now, right? When I will, even to this day, I love Domino's cheesy bread, but I will only ever get emails, which is 2 medium pizzas, $6.99. They are trying to appeal to me as a customer based on my wallet, based on dollars and cents. They're not investing time, and maybe they don't need to. It's Domino's after all, but most restaurants are not Domino's. And what we tell most of our partners is focus more on the relationship part. Instead of spraying and praying and flooding everyone's inbox with the same generic offer, focus on what you would do if someone was coming into your store and sitting down at a table. You would talk about what's on the menu. You talk about the specials. You talk about the chef. You talk about where you source the ingredients. You talk about a new team member that's made a big impact. There are so many stories to tell that a restaurant can tell and communicate to their guests. And I think the biggest shame is that thinking that discounting is the only way to win. I think the metrics I gave you around our onboarding flow, we do the same thing on the lapsed customer side, where we have a conditional flow where the first 5 emails are totally story-based, and email number 6 is a discount, and it's only sent to people who don't convert on emails 1 through 5. So I think restaurants can't keep thinking that they need to get trapped in this race to the bottom and who's going to have the cheapest offering, because then there's a reason customers are fickle, right? Most customers are fickle because they're used to getting discounts everywhere else. And the biggest change I want to see in the industry is thinking about your brand, your values, your story, why you do marketing at this particular restaurant, why you care about working for this brand, and then communicating that story simply. And these are not complicated emails that I'm talking about. These are 3-sentence emails. Hi, I'm Adam from Red Crest. Hi, I'm Adam from Red Crest Fried Chicken. I was the former chef at Esme in Brooklyn. And ever since I was a kid, I remember my grandma's fried chicken recipe, and I wanted to start my own fried chicken brand because of her recipe. Send email. That's the first email in his onboarding flow. And there is nothing discount oriented there at all. Again, it's literally an emotional story that resonates with anyone who orders directly from him. And so that's the biggest change I want to see, is people focusing more on the relationship part and less on the customer part. Discounts are a tool in the toolkit. They shouldn't be the entire, they shouldn't be your saw and your hammer and your screwdriver and everything else. So.
Exactly. Great way to put it. Thanks for talking through kind of the marketing mindset there. But let's talk about, the nuts and bolts here a little more. Putting these tools to work, I think, is a sunk cost that a lot of people are worried about. It's a development cost. It's a time cost. It's a time cost when people are, running their restaurants. What does it take to get your tools running? Sid, do you want to start?
Yeah. To be honest, we're not for the mom and pop store. We are at heart. We live inside of the mobile app, and every restaurant should not have its own mobile app. Right? That's not feasible. And you also need enough brand affinity and loyalty to get people to download your app, right? Starbucks can get people to download their app, right? Pete's Coffee, well, wrong example, but Joe's Coffee on the block is not going to get you to download their mobile app, right? Now there's third-party mobile apps that, whether it's food delivery providers or loyalty providers or reservations companies, whose mobile app we would live inside. So if we're going directly to the restaurant or the food service provider, you're going to have enough scale where a customer will want to download your app, or come directly to your website. Website's fine too, and that's where we play. We play in the app or on the website, and that's just not feasible for a lot of sort of individual stores. But for the larger chains, and then of course for the food delivery providers are actually some of our largest customers, right? Like, Delivery Hero in Europe, iFood in Brazil that I mentioned. I wish I could mention the US one, but they're our largest customers because millions of people, if not tens of millions, are talking inside of their app on any given day, and they do it over Sendbird. And that's sort of where the value that we provide is in that conversation. More and more, what we're seeing, honestly, is chat sort of becoming the command center of the experience inside of the mobile app. Instacart is not a customer, but one of my favorite apps to order from, especially in the pandemic. And after you've placed your order, I don't know if you've noticed this, the entire experience is in the chat thread, right? Inside of the chat thread, you're like approving items, finding replacements, getting updates. The driver's on the way, the driver left the store, the driver's in the store, the driver's on aisle 5. Everything is part of that conversational thread. Some of it human, some of it system. And it just feels natural. and you can scroll back and forth and see what happened, and you're not browsing around and which menu item and you're clicking, right? The whole experience becomes a chat experience. And we're seeing that in more and more. We're seeing that in marketplaces with e-commerce. We're seeing that in payments, right? Everyone's going the Venmo model of trying to turn a chat thread into a payment or facilitate a payment with a chat thread around it. So, that's sort of where we feel the market's headed, and why we're pretty excited is, hey, if you're like a Starbucks and you want to tell your story and get to know your users, if you're like a Grubhub or a Postmates and you want to tell a story and get your users and you want to engage them in a conversation, whether it's today it's chat, voice is sort of exploding with the popularity of Clubhouse, videos exploded with the popularity of Zoom. Those are the tools now at your disposal to get to know your customers, and that's where we sit.
Wonderful. And Abhinav, do you want to walk us through kind of what it takes to get started and how you see that trajectory?
Yeah, sure. So we have over 30 integrations across point of sale, reservations, loyalty, first party ordering, third party ordering. The internal metric that we track, like if my team watches this, they're going to kick me. But the internal metric that we track is 7 days from the time you sign on with us it should be 7 days to where you're fully onboarded. Both your integrations to capture all data moving forward and all of your as much historical data as possible. That's number one. Number two, then in terms of time to value, the other internal metric that we track is 21 days from the time you sign a contract with us to when you're actually launching your first marketing campaign to make the data actionable. We want you to start making revenue with us within your first month with Biki. Because for us, again, it's not just about the data, it's about making that data actionable and driving real revenue and helping restaurants understand that data is an underutilized tool that they can leverage to actually drive revenue and build relationships with their guests. We have various ways in which we achieve those integrations. Some of it's just APIs, some of it's CSV uploads, some of it's scraping emails for orders as they come in. But it's a fairly simple and straightforward process. We've taken a lot of time to get there, but it's become a fairly simple and straightforward process, thankfully. And like I said, within the first month, you should be launching a campaign with your data and seeing real revenue and ROI with the product.
Wonderful. That's very cool. And Sid, I wanted to go back to something you touched on, but on the voice and some of these next level technologies, how do you think restaurant companies should be thinking about future-proofing their marketing, their app, their entire kind of way of reaching the consumer?
Yeah, I think future-proofing is never going to happen in one day, right? Future-proofing means you have your ear to the ground, that you're watching customer behavior, that you're meeting them where they want to be met, that you're not locked into your old ways, right? That's fundamentally what future-proofing is, more so than any specific technology. You don't need to be on the bleeding edge, but at the same time, if customers are starting to behave in a certain way, insisting on sort of the old way is not going to get you very far. So that's what I would say there. But you don't have to chase. Again, it comes back to that. Depending on your size and scale and what you're able to sort of accomplish. By the way, your last question on how do you get started, I think I got a little lost in my answer. You would get started, on our website. You could get a free trial. It takes days or weeks, but you do need a developer. We are fundamentally at heart a development platform, not a WYSIWYG, SaaS app like Biki. So you do need a developer, but yeah, with any technology partner, you want to partner with somebody who's going to be around and who's going to sort of do a lot of that innovation watching for you, right? So ideally, any technology partner will always want to sort of keep you as a customer for 3 years, 5 years, 8 years. And for that relationship to work, they need to make sure that they're sort of your eyes and ears on the ground as well, and helping you chart through all the twists and turns that happen in the tech market or in the consumer market. So yeah, I think it's choosing the right partner and just not being rigid in your ways.
Wonderful. And Abhinav, how do you think a company can kind of future-proof their marketing, or be wary of what's ahead? I think Sid had a great point there about someone who's going to be there for the long haul and is helping build that ecosystem for you is huge.
Yeah. It's a really important but difficult question also because the dynamics of the restaurant ecosystem are so complex these days. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's a good question. You know, because fundamentally, again, like what we are, my answer is obviously going to be just like look at the data, which is also a kind of a variation of what Sid said. Is if you want to future proof, the answer is typically in having data on what's actually happening in your business, and not just having that data, but understanding what that data means. From a company standpoint, you know, like, again, my background is in finance. And so I made the mistake when we first started building Biki of being like, cool, let's just pull all this data together and put some charts up and everybody's going to understand it because I intuitively understand it. And that was not right. You know, like that was just a personal bias that I had coming from my background. And so from a product development standpoint, from a product philosophy standpoint, everything that we do at Biki is now fundamentally rooted in almost helping restaurants draw meaning from their customer behavior data. To give you an example, like one of the things we're thinking about is we have a basic analytics page in the product. One of the things we think about is, or one of the ways I approach it is like, if I was the CMO of a 5, 10, 50 location restaurant, what are the things that I would care about now? How would I be thinking about data now? How would I be thinking about my customers now? How would I be thinking about engaging them now? And one of the most basic things that I do in a spreadsheet for our partners is cohort retention. 100 new customers came in July. What percentage of them came back in August? What percentage came back in September? What percentage came back in October? Literally every restaurant I show it to, the first time I show it to them, they're like, what is this? I've never seen this before. And I'm like, well, your cohort retention is like 100 customers came in, brand new customers came in July, only 10% came back in August. And they're like, whoa, what does that mean? That's not great. How do I improve that? And so it's like the way I think about product development and future proofing and almost helping restaurants make this data actionable is through, like, again, if I'm thinking about your business, what are the tools that I need to be successful in your role? Because that will fundamentally allow me to build a product that generalizes my learnings and generalizes my hypothesis and helps every restaurant, you know, and this is not a future-proof philosophy. It's good enough for the next 12 to 18 months because, as Sid said, you're relying on having a partner that is keeping their ear to the ground, that is abreast of what other platforms like third parties or OpenTable or Resi are doing, so that, you know, we at Biki can say, cool, that's what the big guys are doing. We're just going to democratize those tools so that you can do it for your business at your scale. So it's about us listening to our customers. It's about helping them. It's about making sure that they are successful, not so that they can continue paying us, but so that they feel like they're getting value from, you know, the problem that we believe we're solving. So.
Goes both ways too, but sure.
I mean, the payment part is nice. Like you can see, I got, or this side, right? I got kids, so yeah, the payment part is definitely nice.
That's good. You touched on something that I wanted to dig into a little bit. We're running short on time, so I wanted to get to a user question that, or a watcher question that came through. But on loyalty, Sid, I want to start with you. You know, how does this kind of personalized chat enhance loyalty and keep people plugged into the company? Because I think you both touched on that in a few ways, but I think it's really important.
Yeah, I think if people feel engaged, they feel like human beings, they'll have loyalty to your brand and come back, right? You know, if you put a very specific restaurant example, right? You come in, you sit down, your server's super friendly, you know, they genuinely want to get to know you. They ask you questions. Maybe they comment on something. There's a personal connection. And you're like, hey, I love this place. You know, I want to come back, right? Now think about the digital equivalent of that, right? Similar to Abhinav's example with the fried chicken. You know, if people feel engaged, if people feel talked to and heard, they will come back. And, you know, again, all we do is give you the tools to do that via chat, voice, video. But at the end of the day, it's a tool that allows you to build a relationship. It's a tool that allows you to have a conversation with the customer and build a relationship. And that's, of course, the onus of that is on the business. But at the end of the day, that's what's going to keep people coming back. Well, that ain't great too.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, those human connections can be hard to quantify, but hugely powerful, right? Abhinav, how about you? How do you think you know, having a good CRM can increase loyalty? I know something that you're working on is converting people to native delivery. How do those interchanges work, or how does that look?
It's a data is meaningless by itself. I think like that's the thing I keep coming back to in terms of building loyalty with guests. The data is only always a vehicle for you to establish that connection with your customer. Even if your food is bad, having the data from someone like Sendbird, where it's like the food was terrible and I had a great experience, you need to know about that interaction, and it needs to be mapped to a customer's order, because maybe you'll surface that everybody who says I had a bad experience and the food is bad, maybe all that's tied to one specific menu item. Maybe it's tied to only new guests. Maybe it's your best seller, right? And so that's why your cohort retention is only 10%. But the idea again is like there's meaning behind the data. Data is just like a track record. It's footprints in the sand. By itself, all you know is that someone walked here, but you don't know their shoe size. You don't know how fast they were walking. You don't know how tall they are. You don't know how quick they were running. And so again, it's about understanding what the meaning is behind that data, and then figuring out what to do with it. To something you touched on, which is like getting customers to order more from direct ordering channels. Like, very practical example. We pull all your historical data from the POS, third party and first party. We put it together to build an audience in Facebook so that you can remarket to every customer that you've ever had, or you can segment it based on lapsed, based on new, based on lifetime value, based on menu item, and you can push that to Facebook, right? The data is what enables you to understand these behaviors. Facebook is the tool that you use to engage with them. And then the point is to drive an incremental order through your native online ordering platform, which is the goal, again, to get more data on the customer, to understand how their experience was, to realize the actions that drive incremental revenue. But the point, again, is in terms of like what does a CRM do to build loyalty? It's the system of record for your customer data. It's the source of truth that lets you know who your guests are and how they think about your brand, how they feel about your brand, how quickly and frequently they're ordering. And that can seem complex, and that can seem like a lot and can seem overwhelming, but I promise you, all I do is think about how to make that simple for restaurants and make that easy for them. Because again, these are the tools. This is what third parties are, marketing engines that never sleep, right? They're actively leveraging data. They've raised billions of dollars. And I'm not going to say anything about the business models. The fact is they've raised billions of dollars to leverage this data on their consumer behavior to drive incremental orders and incremental revenue. Why can't and why isn't every restaurant doing the same thing with their customer base, with their unique asset, which is their customer data, lying in all of these various siloed guest-facing platforms that I mentioned at the top of this discussion? And so that's how I think about a CRM, and again, just being the foundational tool that helps you unlock further incremental revenue, further incremental profitability, and more importantly, again, that relationship with the guest.
Wonderful. Well, I really appreciate both your time, but we are out of time. Thank you so much for being a part of this, and thanks so much for you out there watching. Please stay tuned for our next session, where we're digging into the all-important digital ordering space with some key updates for the industry.